On your Tuesday morning, Conrad Van Order, Damian Mitchell here, alongside you for the next hour, getting you set. It officially starts today. I know some people don't observe it. You can still fill out your brackets until Thursday morning, but the NCAA tournament is here. You're going to get 2 games tonight. The first 4 in action. You're going to get 2 games tonight. 2 games tomorrow to settle on the 64-team field for the NCAA tournament. And tonight you're going to have the potential opponent of the Auburn Tigers in round 1. They're going to face 16 seed either St. Francis out of Pennsylvania or Alabama State just here south of us in Birmingham. The winner of that game tonight is going to take on the number 1 overall seed Auburn Tigers on Thursday. And then you have the team, the controversy, the team that everyone's talking about, the North Carolina Tar Heels sneaking their way in, the last team into the tournament after UAB fell to Memphis in the AAC championship game. They take on San Diego State.
There we go.
In the second first 4 game that you're going to have going on today. The winner of that will advance to the first round of the NCAA tournament. And I'm just glad to know that it's finally here. As I said, you still, don't worry if you're waking up, you're like, oh crap, I forgot the game started today. You can still fill out your bracket until Thursday morning. These games don't count.
Yeah, because there aren't many people that are probably taking Alabama State or St. Francis, PA, to pull off the upset on Auburn, no matter
No, I mean, no offense, game. I don't need to know who's going to win that game
right
for the first round, but but you never know.
Okay, I'm okay. Did I miss something? But is today opening day in baseball?
Okay, so they are playing a special series in Tokyo.
Oh, okay.
Between the Cubs and the Dodgers. And
okay. They did this last year, didn't they?
Yes.
Okay. And then they're going back to spring training after this, right?
Correct. So it counts. Like this is the start of the regular season for them.
Okay.
But yes, the actual opening day is not for like 2 more weeks.
Okay, because I was looking up, I was like, wait a minute. This is live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's live.
Okay. All right. Baseball. It's one of those things where when we talk about, the opening week in college football or opening week in the NFL, I feel like opening weekend in baseball was like its standalone thing. Like, you knew exactly what dates it was that weekend. And to me, that just doesn't make sense how, like, even if you wanted to go internationally, couldn't you still do it on opening weekend? It's
the appetizer. It's to get everybody fired up.
I just think that's extremely strange. And they're in Tokyo. They're in Tokyo, Japan.
That is correct.
Okay. I'm sorry. Like that just completely.
Well, Ohtani wanted to, go play in front of the home crowd.
I got you. I'm sorry. Like, that's just, that is something I did not expect. I was like, wait a minute. Was this a replay of last year? And then I see the Japanese lettering in the background. Okay, it makes sense. It makes sense. My apologies, y'all. I did not mean to sidetrack you, Conrad. That's my fault. I just thought like my eyes were deceiving me for a second. But
no, but you're good. The Cubs are up 1-0 in the top of the 4th.
Yeah. So good morning.
I think it's cool. You get to wake up and watch some. I mean, yeah, it's. I imagine in your situation, if you had forgotten this was going on, it's probably a little confusing. Yeah. I could see that.
Oh, I don't remember hearing any pub about it for real. Then maybe my circles have just been locked in on spring practice and an NCAA tournament. But no, yeah, baseball is here as well. My apologies, but yes, the NCAA tournament is on. It's when we flip over the calendar for March. I don't think about spring training. Pitchers and catchers, like, hey, just let me know when opening weekend is, then we'll go from there. But now it's time for the brackets. We are bracket busting. I made one yesterday out of probably potentially 3 that I'll make. But I made one yesterday, and I think there'll be a fan base here in the state of Alabama that'll probably be pretty happy that I have penciled into the Final Four. Now, the national championship game, things can happen, but I do think you have a successful season if you make it to the Final Four on either side of the state.
Yeah, in the bracket that I've made, I had a team from the state of Alabama losing the national championship, actually.
Wow, you went against your alma mater, Conrad. I never once thought that you would do that. Did you have an Iron Bowl national championship?
I did not.
Hmm,
I did not.
interesting.
I did have an SEC team winning the national championship, though.
Oh, so I'm assuming there's a rematch from an earlier game that you have penciled in for the national championship.
Correct. And let's just say the team that lost that last time is, in my bracket at least, they're losing again.
Hmm.
So, chomp chomp.
Yeah, and listen, the state of Florida, well, actually, the Florida Gators, they ran the state of Alabama. So I'm just going to, if my memory serves me correctly, there's only one way. There's only one team in the state that could play the Florida Gators in the national championship, and interesting.
Just the way the bracket worked
I
out.
know it. Listen, man. That's the one thing we love about March. It's like, again, I filled out one. And it's.
I was about to say that's probably not going to be the one that I end up using.
Right.
For,
it's kind of,
trying to win purposes, but sometimes you just got to fill one out.
yeah, get the lay of the land.
You just and you don't overthink it. You don't get too in the weeds with the different numbers and things. You just go in, you fill it out based on what your gut tells you, just looking at every matchup, and you see where it takes you, and then you go and you stress about it, for forever. And it's funny, we were talking about it yesterday on Three Man Front a little bit, but it's it's like the more you watch college basketball, the worse you're going to do in your bracket.
Exactly.
Essentially. And once you come to that realization and you accept it for what it is, and you just live with it. And it's like, cause you understand, I mean, how many of you, I'm sure we've all been in an experience, whether it's work or friend group or whatever. Maybe you have like a small group at church. I'll do a bracket pool. The person who does a bracket that's just, oh, I like their colors the best. Or,
Exactly.
oh, their mascot's the most fun. Or, based on which school I would most have wanted to go to, in college, whatever, something like that. That's the person that's going to win.
Mm-hmm.
9 times out of 10, that person's going to win. And it's going to be somebody that's, oh, this is the first year I've ever filled out a bracket. Because that's what happened with my wife. She had never filled out a bracket before until like 2 years ago. She came in and won the whole thing, like our bracket pool, the first time. Because she was like, oh, I'm just, kind of just picking who I like. Man, that.
And we're over here having paralysis by analysis, trying to, think of points per game and strength of schedule and all these things and try to put it all together. Sometimes it's the path of least resistance. It's sometimes the correct way to fill it out. When you don't overthink it, it's just like, oh, I got to fill in this same win. Boom. And then usually when those things happen, you feel pretty confident, but you feel pretty good. Like, oh yeah, I had that one. That was a lock.
Well, it's like this year, how many people are, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the first game on Thursday is that Louisville Creighton game.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, when you start off with, I mean, come on, give us a softball, right? Give us like that 1-16 to start off, so everyone feels good. Like, okay, yeah, we got a win under our belt. Let's see where it goes. No, like, I mean, you're gonna have a lot of people that don't have a perfect bracket anymore after the first game, because that's such a tricky game to. But we put ourselves through this every single year.
And as we look at the bracket altogether, I say we have some tricky games just in the opening round. The Louisville Creighton is one. I think a game too that, because of who the coaches are and the brands that they represent, Kansas and Arkansas. Because to me, when I look at Arkansas, and if they were to knock off Kansas, I truly would not think it's an upset. Like, I don't look at that game and think, oh man, if Kansas doesn't play well, Arkansas can sneak up on them. I think Arkansas could line up 5-on-5 with their best 5 and beat Kansas. I've seen this Arkansas team, take some of the top teams in the SEC to the wire. Now, they do have a horrible loss to South Carolina, but when you watch Arkansas, I mean, think of Big Z just a couple weeks ago when he hit 9 threes in a game. Like, they have the capacity, they have the capabilities to go in and be confident that they can pull off this win. And I think for Kansas, when you look at everything they've done in the Big 12, it was kind of one of those, okay, like Houston and Iowa State, Texas Tech, like they are the breadwinners in this conference. Kansas felt like, okay, we're not where we used to be. We're also not just god awful. but they're in that middle ground of, okay, yeah, if we put it all together, could we be dangerous? But I don't look at this Kansas team as confidently as I have in years past about them making a deep run. And I feel as though Arkansas, I'll go ahead and tell you in one of my bracket, well, in the bracket that I've already made, I have Arkansas knocking off Kansas. And it doesn't feel like, just because of their seeding, it's 10-7. It doesn't feel like that's a big quote unquote upset to start off the opening days of of March Madness.
No, no, I don't think it is. And do it for Bucky, right? Do it for Sanford. Get revenge for last year. Because again, I mean, I will remain adamant that Sanford
It
kind of
was a
got
block.
hosed last year.
It was a block.
And so now if you're Arkansas, you have a chance to go and do us a solid here in Birmingham. But no, I mean, I look at that game just like you're saying. I mean, as we've seen with Kansas this year, just because they were the number one team in the country when things started off, they clearly have not played to that level. And if you're Arkansas and you're potentially going to have Boogie Flan back, that's a big piece if he is indeed healthy and able to contribute. Um, yeah, I just again, if you get good Arkansas, I think there's no question that Arkansas can win that basketball
Mm-hmm.
game early on in that first round. And I think that kind of goes for a lot of these SEC teams, right? Like, okay, is St. Mary's probably a little better than Vanderbilt? Yeah, okay, probably, but I think Vanderbilt has a very realistic shot of winning that game, especially if you watch the WCC championship with St. Mary's and Gonzaga, and you saw how inept they were offensively at times. I mean, they didn't hit. They went like 1 for 20 from or 0 for 20 from the 3-point line in that game. I
Yep.
mean, if you get a performance like that, I absolutely think a team like Vanderbilt can get on. I mean, we talked yesterday about a Georgia and a Gonzaga, and where okay, right now Gonzaga is listed as a 5.5 point favorite. Okay, yeah. Do I think Gonzaga is probably the better team in that one? Yes, but I've also seen Georgia on certain days, and okay, maybe the other team didn't have their A game, but I mean that's a Georgia team we've seen beat Florida, who right now, I mean that's kind of the consensus, favorite pick to win the tournament. I think for
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people because they've played their best basketball. So I mean, there's a lot of these matchups, and again, a lot of these are 8, 9, 7, 10 matchups, so you're not expecting that big of a disparity. But I think there's a lot of even outside the SEC, there's a lot of upset picks that, I don't think too many people are going to give you a weird look if you tell them, oh, yeah, this is an upset I have, going in the early parts of my bracket. I mean, you go and look at, this is probably going to be the most popular one, but I mean, Memphis is a 5 seed playing Colorado State, who's a 12 seed. Colorado State's the favorite in that game.
Right.
They're almost a 3-point favorite in the first round of the tournament as a 12 seed. So, there's some sneaky games, I think, in the bracket this year in terms of, you're going around and looking for upset picks and things like that. But I do think the SEC, you're going to see a lot of people that are moving a lot of SEC teams through their bracket just because of how good the conference was this year. And I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of people are going to give them the benefit of the doubt going up against a lot of these non-conference teams.
Yeah. Is there an SEC team that you think just straight up loses their opening round matchup? I think that's the question. When you look at the first round, is there an SEC team? Are there multiple SEC teams that we see not make it to the second round of the NCAA tournament? We want to hear from you. 205-834-9450. If you filled out your brackets, even listen, we're not holding your foot against the fire. You've got a couple days now to kind of make some changes, make some tweaks. You want to do your breakdowns, you want to do some more analysis. But is there a team in the SEC that you do not think make it to the second round of the NCAA tournament? We'll break that question down on the other side. Also got some college football news we want to get to because Deion Sanders, he's making some noise, but he has an idea that I honestly think could work. 205-834-9450. Keep it locked here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. Oh yeah, I know this Journey. I know some Journey now. That's my dogs. That's my crew. I can spot Journey easier than I could Guns N' Roses and AC/DC without a doubt. It's a great song. Good way to bring it back, Conrad. No more confusing Creed and Pearl Jam. Also got educated on that too. Like people really hold on to stuff like that. They don't when they meet you in person, they're like, "Oh, so you really don't know Pearl Jam?" No, I'm sorry. It's just never really been my thing. And then somebody broke it down to me. That's like comparing who was it? I think he said like Marvin Gaye to Teddy Pendergrass. Like you should be able to hear and know the difference. He's like, I mean, they're in the same genre, but they're on two opposite ends of the spectrum. I was like, okay, my apologies. My apologies. But I
Well,
just didn't
you're
know how
trying to
bad.
learn. That's
Yeah,
good.
I didn't
Yeah.
know how far off I was. Like it was like, 3-2 count and 3-2 count and I went down looking. Like, come on, dog. There's no way you actually think that. It's like, listen, man, I you could sit me down and play me a Pearl Jam song and a Creed song, and I wouldn't know the difference, to be honest. And they're like, hey, it's okay. Patted me on the shoulder and said, it's just not your thing. So say no more. We can agree on that. 205-834-9450. We're talking some March Madness of how many SEC teams do you think they're not going to make it out of the first round? Fanboy text in. He says he's got Georgia, Oklahoma, Vandy, Texas, and Arkansas, and Mississippi State get knocked out of the first round.
That'd be a bummer. That's half the teams.
Exactly.
But I can't,
I mean,
can't disagree with any of them. I mean, just because, they're all going to be.
like that Baylor Mississippi State game. I think
That's a
Baylor
tricky one.
Baylor because of namesake, and Mississippi State. It's okay. I've seen what Josh Hubbard can really do if nobody has an answer for him, and I think that's where a lot of these games kind of lay in. Of all right, if there's a bona fide star on one of these squads, I'm kind of leaning towards the fact that, okay, they're going to make a name for themselves in March. Like, this is where you need to elevate because we've seen it all season long. Like, that's why I look at Oklahoma of, all right, if Jeremiah Fears goes out and absolutely kind of like takes over a game, will he have enough around him to knock off the complete UConn? Because I think when you look at this UConn squad and what Coach Hurley has done the past couple seasons, like they're the two-time defending national champions. And you don't feel as confident about them, but this is where they make their money, and this is where they hang their hat. So you're either going into it kind of thinking, man, this is UConn. You can feel the pressure of, okay, can we be the team to knock off the defending champions? Or do you kind of do you let Jeremiah Fears just go out there and ball out and say, hey, we live and die whatever you do, and let the chips fall where they may? But the biggest thing is like you don't want to go into that game thinking about who is across from you. It's all about the matchups and understanding that, hey, we can't turn the ball over. We have to make our shots. Because if UConn gets on a roll, it is going to be a bloodbath, and it will happen quickly.
Yeah, that's one of those games that I guess just mentally, when you're trying to fill out your bracket, it can be tough because you're like, man, all right, would I really pick, the 13th best team in the SEC to knock off the two-time defending champions in the first round
Right.
of the tournament? But then when you really think about it and you're like, yeah, well, why not? Because, again, Oklahoma, they were 13-0 in non-conference games this year. Like you said, Jeremiah Fears is one of the best players. He can be the best player on the floor in that basketball game. And yeah, if you're telling me that he's going to give you, 30 points, 25 points, I think Oklahoma has a very good shot to win that game. But then again, you just look at it as, okay, UConn's been playing a little bit better basketball here the last couple of weeks on top of, yeah, this is kind of their time to shine. This is when, if you're going to flip that switch, this is when it's going to happen. So, games like that are where it just gets really, really tricky. Because, and I do. I think you're going to have a lot of, there are going to be some popular upset picks there. I think Drake over Missouri is going to be a game a lot of people, buy into that one. And understandably, because Missouri certainly, hasn't been playing the best over the last couple of weeks. It was like kind of around that time they beat Alabama. It felt like is when they peaked maybe. And so can they get back to that now? But there's a lot of these games are really, really good. And at the end of the day, though, it's just hard for me not to go back to the beginning parts of the season where I guess my question just goes to, did the regular season just grind down so many of these teams? Because
Mhm.
when we go back to non-conference play, I mean, the SEC was smoking everybody. And so, it's just, are we going to go back to that? And we're going to remember, oh, okay, why did we think, Baylor would beat Mississippi State? Oh, well, is it because it's Baylor, or is it because
Right.
that you actually think they're on the same level as Mississippi State? The same thing with the UConn, right? Are we getting too infatuated with the name on the jersey and the recent history in the tournament, and not taking, I guess, this year for what it is, and how different it looks for some of these teams? So, yeah, there's a lot of intriguing ones, but yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I do hope that person's wrong. I don't want, if 7 SEC teams are losing on the first round of the tournament, it's gonna be a long tournament for a lot of people to come out of the woodworks. Oh, I knew the SEC was overrated all along. I
Danny
never.
Cannell.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give him credit. He at least called his shot early, but there's gonna be
Mhm.
a lot of people that would, be like, oh, I've been saying this the whole season. Well, have you? Have you really? At least Danny, we know he's a certified hater. Like you know
1000%.
what he is.
Because, and I think and that's the thing too, if you've watched, it's hard for me for people to formulate the argument if you haven't watched the entire SEC. Like, we were coming in here midweek of, okay, yeah, Texas A&M they beat Auburn. And we've seen, Florida go to Tennessee and get absolutely destroyed. And now Florida looks like one of the best teams, if not the best team in college basketball right now. We've seen Ole Miss knock off Tennessee at home. Like, there have been days and games where we've come in and like, wait a minute, everything that we thought about the top part of the SEC has completely shifted, because I mean, Missouri's gone down to Florida and beaten them. Missouri, ran Alabama out the gym. Alabama scored over 90 points and still lost the basketball game. So it's tough for me to listen to people like, oh man, the SEC can't be that deep. Have you not watched it? And it would feel like a punch in the gut if half the teams in the tournament from the SEC are already eliminated after round one, and everybody's like, okay, well, yeah, we told y'all this league wasn't that deep. And it's like, well, look at the grind they had to go through in the regular season to even find themselves in this position. And that's the thing too, you got to watch out for the burnout. But on another note, we will get back to the college. Get back to the NCAA tournament when we return. But we do have some college football news. And Deion Sanders, head coach of Colorado, gives an interesting idea with all of the spring cancellations of spring games, teams saying they're just going to do an open practice or have a scripted scrimmage and things. Deion Sanders actually brings out another idea that could be rather interesting to do for the spring.
Spring game will be televised. ESPN2 will broadcast spring game on the 19th. We got to sell this thing out and pack this thing, because the way the trend is going, you never know if this is going to be the last spring game. I don't believe in that. I don't really want to condone that. I would like to play the spring. Actually, I like to play against another team in the spring. That's what I'm trying to do right now, to have it competitive. Playing against your own guys kind of get monotonous, and you really can't tell the level of your guys, because, it's the same old. Everybody kind of know each other towards the end. I would like to style it like the pros. I would like to practice against someone for a few days, then you have the spring game. And I think the public will be satisfied with that tremendously. I think it's a tremendous idea. Yeah, I've told those personnel who should understand that it's a tremendous idea.
And I agree, because think about this. In high school, most people have a spring game where they'll jump a couple classifications, play a team, and it's not like you got to have everything ironed out. Nobody's expecting you to go out there and have your offense clicking at 100%, but you see your guys in a game environment against another opponent. And hell, think about this. If you're an FBS program and you already suffer or struggle with trying to schedule out a 12-team schedule in the regular season, but you got to put in like an FCS school, quote unquote, money game, why not make that a spring game where, okay, if you're an FCS guy, you're going against higher competition, but the pressure of a win or loss, it's more like just gauging what you can do in a game environment early on. It's almost a practice run. And even if you want to just say, hey, coach, we're going to give we're going to give like a scripted 10 plays, and then we'll flip it around. Y'all get a scripted 10 with your potential first offense. And again, just make it as close to game like, or even if you just want to have like an OTA situation where you have a scripted amount of plays, like, hey, we're going to go 25. Your first offense gets 25, second offense gets 10, whatever, however you want to do it. Because to me, you get to see what your guys look like when the lights are on them. You get the coaches off on the sideline, and everybody operates at a quote unquote game pace. But and people want to talk about the injuries and things. You can get injured, running routes on air. Like I've seen guys roll ankles, tweak knees, and things like that just off of some of the normal things that you go. So the risk of injury, cool, I understand that. But you're getting those bullets flying. Okay, can my quarterback process everything when I'm not right behind him? Can he? You can test out the communication in the helmet. Like, okay, we can work out some of the kinks. We got all summer long to figure this thing out. But at least you get a sample size of what your guys look like on game time, and you can get a little bit of depth depending on how you want to script it out.
Yeah, no, I think it's a fantastic idea. I really do, and I think that if this isn't going to be something that everybody's going to get on board with. I think we can all agree with that. But if this is something that I don't want spring games to go away either, like Dion said. And I think the fact that look, everybody knows who you have on your roster. And I understand that you want to protect your depth mainly. This isn't so much about, starters getting poached after spring practice as much as it is about your second and third string guys who you may end up needing in November. I totally understand that. But again, these coaches know everybody. They know what's going on. They have people whose job it is to keep track of available talent and players that they should pursue in the portal or through recruiting. And I just, I find it hard to believe that, adding a little extra layer of secrecy is really going to prevent guys. Guys are still going to be unhappy. Guys are still going to want to leave after spring practice because they don't feel like they're in position to be a starter, or they don't feel like they're going to have the role that they were expecting to have. All of that is still going to happen. And maybe it curbs it, and it happens 10% less. And that's enough for coaches to think that it's worth it. But no, I mean, give your kids an opportunity to see how good they've been, because I totally agree with that. And what he's saying there is, you can only see how good you are against yourself to a certain degree, right?
Yep.
There's always going to be a certain level where, like he's saying, with the level of familiarity that you're going to have with guys, you need to go out and hit somebody sometimes. You need to go out there and, there's going to be times where you could probably go out there in a spring game setting like that and walk away and go, man, we have a long ways to go. But you can also take away the positives from it. And especially for, if you're, I mean, look at Colorado this year, for example, are you going to start a guy like Juju Lewis as a freshman? Well, you probably like him to have some live action to go against in the spring, and at least have some sort of familiarity of being on a college football field and having to operate in those situations, not just going up against his own guys in a scrimmage. So, no, I applaud Dion for doing that. I hope that somebody, this is something that they're able to agree to. I know that Fran Brown, the Syracuse head coach, went on social media yesterday, and he was, essentially volunteering, like, yeah, I'd love to be a part of that and come to Boulder for a few days in scrimmage. So maybe that's something that we get. Hopefully that's the case. Hopefully the NCAA doesn't try to step in and prevent something like this from happening, because that would, they're the fun police. So that's definitely the kind of thing that they would do on their last legs, and just, hey, we're going to remind everybody that we're still here and ruin your fun. But no, I applaud Dion for going out of his way and essentially going the opposite direction that we've seen. I mean, we've even seen it affect Alabama, and we'll see how it looks this year. But, with their modified spring game, we know what Texas is doing, and some of these other programs. So I applaud Dion. He goes up in my book for that, because he knows what is important to the kids and ultimately what's important to the fans. And I think sometimes, it's good to let your fans get a look at things. It's good it's good to, you can't always cater to the fan base, but again, I go back. I think it's a bad decision that if you're Alabama and you're not going to broadcast your spring game on TV. And I understand, maybe you want more people to come down to Tuscaloosa and fill up the stadium, but I just, you're not doing the fan base any services by not making that stuff accessible. And you have a lot of people that spend a lot of money and a lot of time supporting your programs. And you gotta. It goes both ways.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. Would you like to see an actual opponent in a spring game? I mean, we all kind of feel, or majority people feel like, hey, we need we need spring games. We need to see these scrimmages just to at least feel something as we get to the summer, going into the regular season. Do you oppose what Deion Sanders is saying? Do you want to just, hey, like, just make it a scrimmage, go on about your business? We'll keep that conversation going on the other side. Also, take a look at some NCAA tournament as well. Keep it locked right here on Morning JOX and JOX 94.5. 6:39 here on Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Damian Mitchell alongside Conrad Van Order and you as well, our wonderful listeners, 205-834-9450. Coach Deion Sanders from Colorado announced that he would like to scrimmage not his own team, but genuinely want to have an opponent at the end of the spring. And we're trying to get the lay of the land because I do think that this would be a great idea. I want to hear from you, 205-834-9450. Casey texts and he says, I've always thought it was dumb to play a spring game against yourself. I mean, we played other teams in high school. I totally agree with Deion. I'm right there with you. Joseph texts in. He says, let's move these G5 FCS games to become the scrimmage game, pay the smaller schools like they do in the regular season. He also says just do a scrimmage like Georgia could play Georgia State, Kennesaw State, Alabama could play South Alabama, Troy, UAB, things like that. Because I do think that's a great idea because, again, you don't know what you have totally in the spring. Nobody like you. I mean, think about these guys that have just hired their, first offensive, defensive coordinators, these coaching changes and things like that. This is like their first trial run of, hey, everything operates like this is what it looks like on game day. And as opposed of, splitting everybody up, hey, white team on this side, red team on this side, everybody's going through the same thing together and you're going against another opponent. And the thing is, it's not like you have to have everything ironed out. You don't even have to put a score up on the scoreboard if you don't want to and just say, hey, like, we're just going to count first downs. Like, you can have the same scoring system as you would if it was, orange versus blue in a scrimmage. It could be graded just like that, can be scored just like that. But at least you going against another opponent where, okay, we may not know what they line up in. These are some of the adjustments, and just run your base stuff just to see just get a feel of what your team could potentially look like. And you can go back and say, this is what this 2025 team needs to work on in the summer when you're getting into it. Like, hey, even in the regular season, when you're starting the preseason practice, you can go back to the spring of, hey, we're going to tweak this a little bit. If you're an offensive guy, like, hey, maybe on these route depths, this is where I want you to be after seeing what we saw in the spring. It's like, okay, if we see this again, this is how we want to adjust because everything wants to be moved forward. And it's the first look of anything that you possibly could change or put something new in the earlier time in the spring. And you can tweak everything going into the fall.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the idea of, having, I guess, interstate schools. And I understand, I guess some states would have more trouble with this than others, but at least for here, with some of the examples I have, I mean, again, like, you don't need Alabama and Georgia to do their spring scrimmage together. You don't need Auburn and Tennessee to get together for their scrimmage. Like, just imagine having, even if you just did it on an every other year cycle or something like that, where, and maybe, some of the schools wouldn't agree to that, but, one year you have, Alabama versus UAB and Bryant Denny for spring game. And then one year it's here Protective and just imagine, how many people that would go out for an event like that, because I mean, especially for, I know we've seen, I know Auburn played Alabama A&M. You've seen occasionally, I guess, these games played within the state, but I mean, the fact we haven't seen an Alabama UAB or an Auburn UAB, but we've seen Georgia UAB, we're going to get Tennessee and UAB this year. It's like, all right, come on. Like, I mean, that would be good for the state of Alabama to have that kind of a matchup. And if you're not going to get it in the regular season, being able to get that in the spring, imagine if, probably wouldn't have gone over well last year, but you have Alabama and South Alabama scrimmaging and Kane Womack's going up against his former team there. And you have Auburn going up against Troy or something like that, where, again, you're getting in good reps. It's doing, I would say, probably doing a lot of good for the smaller programs as well as giving them an opportunity to kind of, all right, how do we measure up to an SEC program? How do we measure up to the guys that we're lining up against there? And yeah, I think it's a really cool idea. Again, it's a pro fan idea. And I think that's what it is at the end of the day, right? Is if something like this is to happen, it's going to be, something that you're doing for the fan base as well. Because again, I think you are going to have a lot of programs. I have a similar mindset of view on the injury thing of, I mean, how many of these guys are going and playing pickup basketball or going and, you're doing different things over the summer, you're going and, riding a jet ski at the lake, you're riding an inner tube at the lake, like, all things that we've seen. Okay, yeah, you could get injured doing those things just like you get injured going and playing a spring scrimmage and football. So, I don't buy into that idea as much, but I do think that would be a very good opportunity for not only the bigger programs to, get some time to go up against somebody other than themselves, but also then for the smaller programs, it gives them some more visibility and kind of allows them to measure themselves against the bigger programs in their state.
Absolutely. Let's go to the phone lines, 205-834-9450. Our buddy Edward and Clear wants to talk about these spring games. What's going on, Edward?
Yeah, I think this is a great idea. I mean, I had the opportunity to play high school, college, and some overseas ball. And I remember my coach took me to a ACC camp in the summer to play against the best players. And I'm telling you, it helps so much when you play as a team against other teams. It makes you better and tell where you have to work. And plus, it helps coaches in the team to visualize what we're doing right, where we have to get better. So I think that, and plus the public would love to watch those games.
Absolutely, Edward, man. We appreciate you. And I agree with him, man. It's one, you get the competition of, all right, the bullets are flying. How are we going to react? How are we going to operate? And again, if you're in a quote unquote quarterback battle, quarterback situation where you may not have the perfect idea of what you've seen in the spring against your own guys, maybe some dudes are just a gamer. Maybe when they have, unfamiliarity on the other side, they lock in. Boom. Like think about if you're a freshman and you're coming in, you're an early enrollee, and the first chance you get against somebody else isn't, the game one. It's in the spring of, okay, well, this is where I need to work on. Like, I just think the development will help across the board because everybody's in the game-like atmosphere. And again, it can be scripted. You can say, hey, these are the set plays that we're going to run, and we'll go from there. But at least you're going against other opponents where you start to pick up on tendencies when you've practiced against the same guy over and over and over again. Not to say that you still can't develop, but you get another edge of, hey, I've seen this guy do this in practice. Now somebody else is working that move across from me. It's like, boom, I got him. I know exactly what I need to work on. And I just think everybody in that situation gets better.
Yeah, I just think it's interesting that, and I understand that college football is, look, it's a different animal now, and I understand why they want us to do things differently or starting to think about things differently. But it is kind of weird when you think about, all of your life growing up, and just taking high school ball, for example, right? What are you doing in the off season? A lot of people are going to 7-on-7 camps. You're going around and you are competing against, granted, you're not, full pads, suited up 11-on-11. Let's grind it out for 60 minutes. But you are going around and you are practicing, you're scrimmaging against other teams. You're going to camps where you are comparing yourself and going up against other teams from across the state or from, nearby states. And that's, whether you're in football, whether you're in baseball, basketball, like that's what you do when you're growing up, right? Like you spend your off season. I mean, hell, look at your jamboree games, right? Where you're going up against, it's a preseason game essentially. And we do that for these kids growing up in high school. Then you get to college and it's like, hang on a second. We're not going to do that anymore because we're so worried about people poaching players off of our roster. And then if you are good enough to get to the professional level, you go right back to doing what you were doing in high school again, right? And so it's just kind of odd from a developmental standpoint of, okay, so we identify that this is how you develop in high school. This is how you continue to develop even when you're at the highest level. You are a professional football player in the National Football League, but when you're in college, no, we're going to skip that part for 4 years. Just again, I understand the landscape's different than high school and professional ball in college right now, but that's the part that doesn't make sense to me is it's like, okay, so if we're not worried about the injuries being a factor in high school, we're not worried about that being a factor or reason not to do this at the professional level. It's good for development clearly when you're younger, as well as when you reach it to make it to the highest part of the sport. But yet, somewhere in the middle, we're losing that. So hopefully, hopefully this is the start of a turn for things. Thanks to Dion.
Oh, I thought you were going to say a start of something new. I was going to say, okay, that's very High School Musical of you, Conrad.
No.
Yeah, forgot you too cool for a High School Musical. 205-834-9450. We'll keep the conversation going. Hey, since we see you, we want to make sure we give you some time on the other side. Keep it locked right here on JOX 94.5.
.652, welcome back into Morning JOX, JOX 94.5. Conrad and Damian here with you for a few more minutes. Going to get some of your reaction to Deion Sanders, his idea for spring games in college football, as well as the NCAA tournament bracket. The first four tonight, you're going to have two games starting for you tonight. You are going to have St. Francis and Alabama State. The winner of that one will take on Auburn. You're also going to get North Carolina taking on San Diego State. The winner of that one will face Ole Miss in the first round. And this is your reminder that the $1 Million Bracket Challenge is back here at JOX 94.5. You pick a perfect bracket, you win $1 million. If you pick 60 or more games correctly, then you're going to win $10,000. Plus, one local winner here with the best bracket is going to score a $250 gift card to our friends at Twin Peaks. For more information and to make your picks, go visit us online at joxfm.com and click on the $1 Million Bracket tab. Good luck from all of us here at JOX 94.5.
Absolutely. 205-834-9450. Let's go to our buddy Hastings before we get up out of here this morning. What's going on this morning, Hastings?
Man, just like High School Musical, I think with the spring situation, we're all in this together.
Attaboy.
So, we gotta stay lit, stay ripped this morning. So, no, I actually agree with both you guys on a lot of this stuff. And I think you can get injured playing pickup ball, training in the off season. We see a lot of these injuries that are non-contact. But I like Dion's idea, and getting reps against other teams. I don't know how realistic that is, but one of the things that they say about Jameis Winston and some of these other guys is like, man, these weren't practice players.
Mm-hmm.
And even in preseason football in the NFL, you see some of these guys farther out on the depth chart who end up, whether it's special teams or whatever, end up getting under the lights. And you're like, man, that guy can play. Like, he's a gamer. And one of the things that I think we forget about is people perform differently under pressure.
Yep.
And so when you have this pressure that's coming in, it's like we need real live reps, and that's something that you could be missing out on. So I think you should go with it. I'd love to see him play other teams, but in the meantime, hopefully we can hang on to the ones we got. So, hey, let's stay in this together, you guys. Appreciate y'all taking my call. We'll holler at you soon.
Absolutely, Hastings. I love it. Who would have thought High School Musical would trickled up in here this morning?
Well, you're the one that brought it up.
I know. Because I thought you were about to hit the phrase. I was like, okay. What we're here for. Hastings, he's around our age, so he knows what's up.
He gets it.
We're family, man. You love to hear it. We got to keep these spring games sacred, man. Who doesn't want to play somebody else? Back in Cube in the morning. They're next.